Ripple's mission is to make clean energy ownership affordable and accessible for everyone, everywhere. So until today, our large-scale energy assets, whether that's a coal station or a nuclear station, right through to the new wind farms that are getting built at the moment, have been owned almost exclusively by utilities and pension funds and large infrastructure funds. So consumers like you and me, we were simply sat at home waiting for to pay whatever bill landed on our doorsteps. But I've worked in the wind industry for 20 years and I've seen that huge change is possible, and I wanted to enable people like you and me to be able to take control of their clean energy future and actually own the assets which they rely on to deliver their electricity. So obviously people want to see a shift to clean electricity. But yeah, until now, if you wanted to own your own source of clean power, your only option was to put solar on your roof, which is great if it's right for you, but it can be quite expensive, and it's not possible if you rent or if you live in a flat, and if you move home, you have to leave it behind. You can't really take it with you. So, and also there used to be subsidies which enabled it to be more affordable, and those subsidies have now disappeared. So it can be very hard for people to own their own source of clean power now. And there's also, on the other side of that, there's also green tariffs, but they don't generally, they don't actually drive investment in new wind farms and solar parks. They just sort of divvy up what's already there. So I wanted to enable people to have a really easy way to make a big difference, essentially. So for the first time ever, what Ripple basically enables you to do is own a tiny part of a large-scale wind farm and have the low-cost clean electricity that it generates supplied to your home. So you can't own a little bit of a large-scale wind farm on your own, but alongside thousands of other people, you can. And what Ripple does is we bring together all those people so that they can do together what they can't, what is not possible for them to do alone, basically. So onshore wind is now the UK's cheapest source of electricity. So there are real benefits to individuals like you and me owning it. Now Ripple, this model of ownership wasn't possible just 5 years ago. So 5 years ago, onshore wind needed subsidies. The costs were a lot higher than they are today. And Ripple's unique cooperative structure hadn't even been approved by the Financial Conduct Authority. So this model that we are kicking off today is genuinely as a groundbreaking innovation in the UK's energy sector. But yeah, lots of people don't understand that onshore wind is now, because of the history of subsidies, there isn't that awareness that onshore wind is the UK's cheapest and cleanest source of electricity. But the reality is that it is. So there's huge benefits to people being able to own it. So basically, essentially what Ripple does is we enable you to part own a large scale wind farm and have the clean, low cost electricity that it generates supplied to your home via the grid. So we estimate that the upfront cost, because you're getting access to the huge economies of scale that's possible with large scale assets, the upfront cost is around 65% cheaper than the equivalent rooftop solar system to generate the same amount of electricity. It doesn't matter whether you rent your home or if you live in a flat. You don't need to have a lovely southwest facing roof in order to do it. You can live anywhere, and it's fully portable. So if you move home, because it's attached to you, not your home, if you move home, you simply phone up your electricity supplier and they supply it to your new home. So it's fully portable, and there's just a really easy online purchase. So there's no salesman come to your home. You don't need a home survey. There's no scaffolding for the installation. We take care of everything, and the wind farm isn't by your house. There's no sort of inconvenience for that. The wind farm is on a lovely windy hill in South Wales. So it's a completely new way of owning assets. So instead of having a small system on your own roof that you own 100% of, you own a small percentage of a very large asset. And by doing that, you get access to the huge economies of scale that's possible. Now, there are loads of benefits to joining Ripple. The main one is that it's a really good way to act on climate change. So it's a long-term investment which delivers CO2 savings over the long term. So the wind farm is expected to last for sort of 20, probably 25 years. So you get those savings locked in for 25 years. So there are obviously lots of other things you can do to act on climate change. So you might decide to go vegan or stop flying. Lots of those changes are sort of you might not go to fly to America this year, but then you might fly next year, whereas the savings from your wind farm are sort of locked in for 25 years, so you get the real long-term benefit. It's a really solid and tangible climate action for you. And you can also reduce your electricity bills. So we estimate that based on the UK government's most recent price assumptions, that over the lifetime of the wind farm, you could save around 25% on your electricity bill. Now, if the electricity price increases, your savings go up. If they fall, your savings go down. Prices, I should point out, at the moment are quite low because of partly because of coronavirus. But yeah, over the 25-year lifetime of the wind farm, we estimate around sort of 25% savings based on the latest government forecasts. And Ripple is also a fantastic way. It's a fantastic step towards a zero carbon lifestyle. Now, we're not saying own a bit of a wind farm and that's it, climate change, job done. But what we want it to be is a really simple step in the right direction. So once you own a bit of a wind farm, you can add on, you could buy an electric car, you could switch to electric heating. All of that could then be powered by your very own wind farm to get really deep CO2 savings. But once you can see how fantastic it is to be able to act on climate change and how simple it is, we think it'll just stand you in really great stead to then just make deeper savings as well. And lastly, it's really simple. So you can join in a couple of minutes and I'll show you how to do that later. We make everything really easy for you. So you can be as active or as inactive as you like in the co-op. You can be checking your, how much your bit of the wind farm is generating every day or every hour on the app if you want to, or not if you'd rather. So you can try and get your electric car to be charging when your wind farm's operating, or not, whatever works best for you. We're going to do all of our sort of the co-op AGM or the co-op meetings will be online. Again, it's just making it really easy as possible for people to be able to access everything they want to do and be involved, just with minimum trouble for them. So another part of Ripple is that you are joining with thousands of other people to do something amazing. So the wind farm itself will be owned by a cooperative. You become a member of the cooperative when you sign up and join Ripple, and you buy shares in the co-op, and that then represents your bit of the wind farm. The co-op operates on a strict one member, one vote basis. So whether or not you've bought 500 watts of the wind farm or 500, the same number of votes. So we have a co-op board at the moment. They're 4 members of the co-op board. They are wind energy experts from Wales and around the UK. And once the wind farm is fully subscribed, they will then resign as a board, and a new board will be elected by the members. So obviously, when we set the co-op up initially, there weren't any members. But now there will be board members. Those members can then elect the board. But as I said, there'll be really easy online meetings. You can choose to take part or not. And basically, Ripple's role is that we provide all the admin services to the co-op, and we also manage the operations for the wind farm as well. We don't do the operations, but we manage all the contractual interfaces. So we make sure the farmer gets paid for his land rent. We make sure the asset manager and the operations manager all get paid. So we basically provide the professional overview to the co-op, because we recognise that the co-op members aren't expert in wind, whereas we are. So we share our expertise with the co-op members. So we've got a poll here. Now, if you've, you should be able to see a poll button somewhere at the bottom of your screen. So we've just got this one poll, and there's one poll, another poll at the end. So we'd just like to know a bit more about what people's motivations are for joining Ripple. So here we've got, I can share the results with you. So we've got, the results are 44% of people, their primary motivation would be to act on climate change. Exactly 44%, that's exactly the same number, would also, their primary motivation would be to reduce their electricity bill, and then a slightly smaller number would, their primary motivation would be to be part of a co-op. So that's really interesting. Okay, so now moving on, as I said, Ripple's got loads of experience, decades of experience in wind. So I've worked in the wind industry for 20 years. My colleague, Simon Peltenberg, he's worked in the industry for nearly that long as well. We've got experts in finance and online computer, online platforms as well. So we basically bring this expertise to you, and what we do is we don't develop wind farms, and we are not a energy supplier. So what we do is we go out and secure consented, shovel ready, as they say, wind farms. So Simon goes out, speaks to wind farm developers who have got projects which are ready to go. So they're fully consented, ready to go as soon as they've got the money to be built. We then set up a cooperative. So we've set up the first cooperative that was approved by the Financial Conduct Authority in, I think it was October last year, and then we go out and secure customers, which is what we're doing at the moment. We then, when the wind farm or the co-op is full, we then manage its construction and we manage its operation. So we don't do the construction. We've not got a crane to be installing the wind turbine itself. So we manage the process so that there'll be third-party contractors who build the wind farm, but we make sure it's all done on time. And then Co-op Energy, who is our exclusive supply partner for this first project, Co-op Energy, which is powered by Octopus Energy, they effectively buy the electricity from the wind farm and supply the electricity to your home, and apply the savings to your bill. I'll explain a bit more about how that works later. And then we plan to work with smart energy providers to unlock even greater savings. So at the moment, we're in discussions with EV Energy about whether or not we can get it so that you can power charge your car to best reflect the output of the wind farm, and also SunAmp, which is an electric heat battery provider. So can you maybe schedule your heat battery to make best use out of the generation from your wind farm? So it's sort of complete service. I mean, the smart tech stuff will be for a little bit later, but at the moment, yeah, we've got the project that's ready to go. The co-op is set up, and we're currently securing the customers to fill it up. Now, our very first wind farm is called Graigvather. I was there on Tuesday, just meeting the local MP, which is fantastic. So this will be the UK's first ever consumer-owned wind farm, and it's open for ownership now. So Graigvather is a single turbine. It's got all of its planning consent. It's ready to go as soon as we're ready, basically. Now, this is the first of what we hope to be many, many, many much larger projects. So you really are at the start of what we hope will be something really, really transformational in the energy sector. So it's a 2.5 megawatts wind turbine. It can supply around 2,300 households. Ownership starts from £250 for a typical household in the UK, given their typical consumption patterns. It will cost around £1,880 for a typical home to buy enough of the wind farm so that its generation would match their consumption each year for the wind farm's 25-year lifetime. And it's about 15-20 miles northwest of Cardiff. So yeah, this is single turbine, but we want the next projects to be even bigger. And yeah, this is the first of what we hope will be a large number of wind farms to really transform how the energy sector in the UK is owned. So we're hoping to fill the project by mid-August. We're not quite at 50% yet, but we're going to keep going for as far as possible once obviously after this, and we obviously want to fill it as soon as you can, but we all need you to basically sign up and make this project happen, and that shows what an impact you basically have. So we obviously understand that the upfront cost is sort of difficult for some people, so we're looking at how we can make it more affordable. We've reduced the minimum ownership to £250 in order to make it as affordable as possible for as many people as possible. Now, you can add to your ownership later on, so you might own a little bit of Graigvather. You could then own a little bit of say we did a large scale solar project next, you can add on a bit of a solar project and sort of create your whole a little mini portfolio where you can get your electricity from a bit of a wind farm, bit of a solar project, maybe a bit of an offshore wind farm as well. But you can be sure that however much of the project you own, you are really having a genuine impact on the project, and you'll obviously be getting the green electricity that it generates for its 25-year lifetime. And then also, yeah, so once you have signed up, because we are keen for you to share it with all your friends and family, if there's a refer a friend mechanism that we've got on the website, so you can tell your friends and family all about Ripple, and then for every 100 watts that your friends and family buy in the project, you will get 1 extra watt for free. So we'll increase your ownership by 1 watt for free. So yeah, you can tell the world about how fantastic Ripple is. What you need to do is you need to go to ripplenergy.com, click get a quote, and then you put in your electricity consumption. Now, if you don't know what that is, you can use our estimator, or you just put it into that box, basically. And you then click on show a quote if you don't know exactly what your electricity consumption is. So you are then given your one-off cost. So that's your cost of ownership would be that £1,945. It tells you what your electricity savings would be on your bill, and how much of the wind farm you would need to own, essentially. Now, you don't have to own enough to cover 100% of your electricity consumption. You can use the slider at the bottom, and that will you can go right down to £250, which in this example would be 13% of your consumption. You could go to 50%, but in this example, I stuck at 100%. So once you've decided how much you need to own or you want to own, you can then click Show Tariffs, and you then just put in your postcode. This is just our postcode of our office in London. Select your address from the drop-down menu and click to say you're the named utility bill payer. Click continue, and then you're then asked who your electricity supplier is. So if you're supplied by one of these suppliers, a Co-op or Octopus Energy, just click and indicate that you are, and then you're taken on to the next screen, where you create your Ripple account, and you can see up there that you just simply skip the switching bit. So if you're with Octopus or Ripple, you just create your account and then you skip the changing supplier, because obviously you don't need to change supplier. But if you're not with one of those suppliers, you need to click at the bottom to say, no, I'm not supplied by them, I need to be supplied by somebody else. And this is just a regular switching thing. So we're asked, do you want your gas switched as well? So then you put in what your gas consumption is, like you would in any other switching, what type of meter you have, if you have an economy 7 meter, if you have a smart meter as well. Click on show tariffs, and then you're shown there's tariffs that you can be switched to. So we will switch you to either the Co-op 12-month fixed or the Co-op flexible tariff. You can see what your direct debit would be. This is including the electricity and the gas. And then what the estimated bill would be after your savings have been applied. You then just go to create your Ripple account, and then because you have to switch supplier, you then go to the next bit which says, yes, I agree to switch, essentially. And on this screen, you can also see the share offer document, the customer agreement, and the Co-op rules as well. So you just click continue, and then that takes you to the sign up process. Sorry, I could hear it coming through my headset as well, which is quite distracting. So yeah, so you can sign up in just a few minutes. It's very, very simple. And like I said, so if you are with Co-op or with Octopus or London or with Effect or Marks and Spencers, you don't need to switch. You just stay on your current tariff. You skip the switching bit, and then the savings just get applied automatically when the wind farm starts operating. And then if you're not with one of those suppliers, we obviously then switch you. We can only switch you to a Co-op tariff, but if you want to switch to Octopus Go or Octopus Agile, and these are time of use tariffs. So Octopus Go is where you get very cheap electricity during the night, and then Octopus Agile is where you get half hourly priced electricity, you have to switch to a co-op tariff first, and then you can apply to switch to either Agile or Go, because you need a secure smart meter to be on those tariffs. And there's a bit of a delay at the moment in getting those smart meters installed, because of coronavirus has obviously been preventing engineers getting into houses to install them. So if you want to go onto Agile and Go, you can, but you need to be switched to a co-op tariff first, and then you move on from there, basically. Okay, so, oops. So as I said, so you can join our first wind farm today to be part of the UK's first ever consumer-owned wind farm. And to do that, you would get electricity, clean, green electricity for the long term. And as I said, we want this to be the first of many, many wind farms and solar parks that are owned by this. We don't see there's any reason why people themselves shouldn't own the clean energy assets that they increasingly rely on. So I'll just go through now the questions that we've had, and then I can see there's been quite a few questions in the Q&A box already. Obviously, feel free to continue asking more as we go. So, most common question that we get is, how does this work with Co-op Energy and Octopus Energy? Well, Co-op Energy is now a partnership between Mid Counties Co-op and Octopus Energy. So if you're a Co-op Energy customer, all the back end, the customer service stuff is all done by Octopus Energy. Now we've got a partnership with Co-op and Octopus. So effectively Octopus buys the electricity from the wind farm and supplies it to your home. So we don't do that supply bit. We partner with Co-op and Octopus. We are planning to partner with more suppliers in future, in which case you would then be able to switch between those suppliers within our supply pool. But at the moment it is just Co-op Energy and Octopus. And you need to be on a Co-op Energy or Octopus tariff in order to get your savings from your wind farm applied to your bill. Now, do I need to switch? You don't necessarily need to switch. Obviously, if you're already on an Octopus supported tariff, so that is a Co-op Energy, Octopus Energy, Effect, London Power or M&S Power, you don't need to switch. You just stay on your current tariff. If you're not on one of those tariffs, then you do need to switch, but we switch you as part of the process. So we've had a couple of people who have sort of switched themselves before joining. You don't need to switch yourself. We can switch for you as part of the sign-up process. And as I said, for Octopus Agile and Octopus Go, you need to switch to Co-op Energy first, and then they can switch you before. If you can delay your switch, so if you're on a fixed term contract, so say you're on a fixed term contract that doesn't run out until December, you can choose to delay your switch. So when you get to on the switching page, in that summary there, you can see in the red circle, you can choose to delay your switch. So then you simply put in the date that you want to switch on. We don't switch you now. You can stay on your fixed term contract with your current supplier. Obviously the wind farm's not going to start operating until spring next year. So provided that you've switched by the time the wind farm starts operating, you won't lose any of your savings. But that's explained on our website. Okay, another big question that we get is, how are your savings calculated? So your savings are the difference between the market, the wholesale electricity price, and the operating costs of the wind farm, multiplied by your share of the generation the previous month. So in May, you would get the savings that have been generated in April applied to your May bill. Now, approximately over the lifetime of the wind farm, it's looking at around sort of 4.5 pence per kilowatt hour for your share of the generation. Now, that's not a tariff, because you can't use loads of electricity if your wind farm has only generated half the amount of electricity that you've consumed. You obviously only get savings related to the generation from your wind farm. You can use as much electricity as you want, but the savings only relate to what your share of the wind farm has generated. Now, here you can see the wholesale price of electricity goes up and down all the time. The market price goes up and down all the time, whereas the operating cost of the wind farm is really low and stable. So because everyone has paid for the construction costs of the wind farm upfront, the wind farm only needs to be paid its low and stable operating costs. So effectively, Octopus buys the electricity on your behalf, because you're the owner, from your wind farm at the low and stable operating costs. So that means that Octopus avoids buying electricity at the higher and more volatile wholesale market price. So Octopus can pass these savings on to you, and Ripple just makes it all happen. So if the wholesale price of electricity is 5 pence a kilowatt hour, and Octopus buys it for 2 pence a kilowatt hour. There's a 3 pence per kilowatt hour saving there. So if your share of the generation, if your share of the wind farm generates £1,000, 1,000 kilowatt hours in a year, you would get 1,000 times 3 pence saving on your bill. But it's applied monthly. But essentially it means that you get access to that low and stable priced electricity for the 25-year lifetime of the wind farm. So it doesn't matter to you whether the wholesale price is skyrocketing or if it's plummeting, your cost of your electricity from your wind farm is low and stable for its 25-year lifetime. Now, another question that we get a lot is, do I get free electricity? Now, you don't get free electricity when you buy a bit of the wind farm. So only around 30 to 40% of your electricity bill actually represents the electricity itself. So the rest of it is things like grid charges. Obviously, the electricity goes from the wind farm to your home via the grid, so you need to pay all your grid charges. The supplier has a cost in terms of, Octopus's metering costs, and there's also taxes and levies that every electricity consumer needs to pay. So the saving, if your bit of the wind farm generates exactly the same amount of electricity that you use, that purple bit on the graph, instead of being, take for example 5 pence per kilowatt hour, it would reduce down to 2 pence per kilowatt hour, but you still have to pay everything else like any other electricity consumer would. The saving is on the electricity part of your electricity bill. So another question we quite often get is how is Ripple different to a green tariff, basically? Now, the thing with green tariffs is they are, most of them, not all of them, but the majority of them are simply matched with what's called a green certificate. Those green certificates are generated, every wind farm, every biomass plant, every solar park creates these certificates, and those certificates are then matched off against the electricity that's supplied under these green tariffs. But it's not the certificate value that actually has driven the investment in that wind farm or solar park to happen. That historically has largely been because of subsidies. So with green tariffs, they sort of they divvy up the green electricity that's already in the market rather than driving new investment. Whereas with Ripple, you personally are, together with thousands of others, enabling new wind farms to be built, and you actually own part of that new wind farm. So you can have a far, far bigger impact than green tariffs can. Another question that we quite often get is, can businesses get involved? So yeah, businesses are really keen to get involved. So we're looking at ways that can happen. We've had a lot of interest. You can register your interest if you're a business. You can register your interest at the in the menu bar at the bottom of the front page of our website, and then we can keep you updated as things progress with that. Another question is, what if I use less electricity than is produced by my bit of the wind farm? So there's sort of a surplus electricity. Now, because your savings that are applied to your bill are driven by how much your bit of the wind farm generates, if your bit of the wind farm generates more than you use, it just means you get all the savings. That electricity that it actually generates, you don't use, it goes to somebody else, but you still get the savings applied to your bill. So the flip side of that is that if you use more electricity than you generate, so maybe you've only bought £250 worth of the wind farm, and that covers 15% of your electricity consumption, you get your savings related to that bit of the wind farm. All the rest of the electricity that's not covered by your generation from the wind farm, you obviously just pay regular rates for that. So another question related to this is, why can't there just be a special Ripple tariff? So as I said, because we don't make people own as much of the wind farm as would generate 100% of their electricity consumption. They can own more or less. There's loads of flexibility around that. We can't simply apply a 3 pence per kilowatt hour or 4 pence per kilowatt hour discount, because we don't require your consumption to be the same as your generation. And also we think, Ripple's all about choice. We want you to have a choice of tariff. We don't want you to be we don't want to have to offer a sort of one size fits all tariff. So you can choose whichever co-op tariff if you want. You can choose Agile and Go as well. We think that flexibility is really, really important. We don't want people to be locked into a single tariff structure, which is why there isn't a single sort of special ripple tariff. Your savings are simply applied to whatever tariff you're on, which is one of the really fantastic things about Ripple. So is Ripple an energy supplier? No, we are not an energy supplier. We are, there's nobody else like us in the market at the moment. So we've sort of called ourselves a clean energy ownership platform. So we bring together, we make everything possible for individuals to own a bit of a wind farm and get the electricity that it generates supplied to their homes. So as I said, we don't do the wind farm development and we don't do the supply. Our platform just brings it all together and makes it all happen for us, basically. And as I said, Co-op Energy and Octopus are our first supply partners to do that. So we also get asked, sort of, what are the risks? Now, before you join, you should read the share offer document. It's available on the website and also throughout the sign up process. That explains what the risks are. So the primary risks are, as I explained earlier, the electricity price risk. So if the price of electricity goes through the floor, there would be a risk that the savings that you get applied to your bill would not be greater than the upfront cost of electricity. Obviously, the flip side of that is that electricity prices increase a lot, your savings would increase significantly as well. So electricity price risk is one risk, and also output from the wind farm is another. So if your bit of the wind farm generates loads of electricity, it's a really windy year one year, your savings would obviously increase. If it's not a windy year, your savings would decrease. Now, for the when we estimate the generation, we've had independent estimates. We've also, you can have a sort of conservative, which is called a P90, which is the level you would expect, level of generation you would expect sort of in 90% of years. So it's very conservative, or a P75, which is sort of the mid scenario, or a P50. A P50 is you would expect in half the years generation would be higher than that level, in half the years it would be lower. We've chosen to base ownership on the P75 level, and we've adjusted it down a little bit as well. So we're taking quite a conservative view on how much generation your bit of the wind farm would generate. People also ask about what happens if there's a mechanical failure or a blade falls off or something. So the turbine itself is covered by a warranty from the turbine manufacturer. There's also it's also covered by the service agreement, the operations and service agreement, and it's also insured like any other obviously valuable asset would be insured. We also get asked, can I switch electricity supplier? So we are in discussions with other suppliers at the moment. In time, we want you to be able to, we want to increase our pool of suppliers so that you could then switch between those suppliers. However, you will have to remain on a co-op tariff for the first year after the wind farm starts operating. So until sort of April 2022, so the wind farm is expected to start operating sort of April 21. For the 12 months following that, you'll have to be on a Octopus or co-op tariff, but we hope that after that you'll be able to switch. We'll have a bigger pool of suppliers and you'll be able to switch between them, basically. As I said, we want maximum range of different suppliers, so we plan to partner with up to 8 suppliers. We don't want to partner with everyone, so we're going to partner with up to 8, but we want there to be a real choice and variety in who those 8 are. Another question that we get asked a lot is, what if I die, basically? What happens to your shares in the event of your death? So basically the shares are not transferable. You can't sell them to anyone else except if you die. So they are inheritable. So we'll have a bit on the customer dashboard where you can indicate who you want your shares to be passed on to in the event of your death, and obviously we'd encourage you to keep that updated and obviously tell the person of your wishes as well. But yeah, you can't transfer them in any other circumstance except you can pass them on to your children. And what happens at the end of the turbine's life? So it's a democratic process, so it's up to the co-op members to decide what they want to do at the end of the turbine's life. So the options could include, we just decommission the turbine, everyone walks away, they've had a lovely time, but the turbine gets taken down. They might decide having a lovely time and we want to put new turbines up, in which case you'd expect a few years before the end of the turbine's expected lifetime, the co-op members would decide, yes, this is what we're going to do. They would have to obviously then apply for planning consent for newer, presumably bigger turbines by that point as well, have to get new agreement from the landowner that we can have more turbines on the site, and there would also be, when in order to pay for those turbines to go up, there would have to be injections of new share capital into the co-op. You wouldn't be necessarily obliged, if the co-op decided to put new turbines up, you wouldn't be obliged to put more money, and you could withdraw your membership at that point. And another option would be to do a major refurbishment of the turbine and extend its life by whatever, 5, 10, 15 years potentially. Expect situation, there would need to be some injection of additional funds, or potentially your savings would be reduced so that the co-op could build up the funds to cover the cost of the major refurbishment program. What happens if we don't fill up the project? So if the wind farm doesn't get filled up, it doesn't go ahead. So, and everyone gets all of their money back essentially. This means that you are genuinely making this wind farm happen. So without people like you joining the co-op, this wind farm will not happen. So you are having a real, genuine impact and genuinely increasing the amount of renewable capacity that the UK have. We've also been asked what happens if Ripple goes bust or is taken over. So Ripple doesn't own any bit of the wind farm. So the co-op is entirely independent of Ripple. So we're not members of the co-op. We've got a 5-year management agreement with the co-op. So we would plan to provide these management services for 5 years. If we went bust, the co-op would still operate. It would need to get another company, or it could try and do it itself, but it would probably be better to get another company to become the managing agent. So basically to take over the role that Ripple does, the co-op would need to find another company to do that. But essentially the wind farm is still owned by the members of the co-op exactly as it is today, basically. And then what's the payback period? So the payback period we estimate to be around 14 years. And as I explained earlier, if electricity prices increase beyond beyond the government's latest price assumptions, the payback reduces because the savings increase. If electricity prices are lower than those assumptions, the payback period would be longer. And as I said, we've been quite conservative on the generation levels expected from the wind farm. We also got asked, can I get back more than I've invested? Now, as I said, you can't transfer or sort of sell your shares in the co-op. So if electricity prices do go sky high, you can't cash in your shares and make loads of money on your co-op shares, basically, because of the structure of the co-op. They're co-op shares. They're not they're not transferable shares. You can only withdraw your share. Now, if you want to withdraw your share, so maybe you're moving to America and you don't need any electricity in the UK anymore, you can apply to withdraw your share. Now, Ripple will keep a waiting list of people that say, actually, I've just bought an EV, or, you know, I only bought enough to cover 50% of my consumption to begin with. I actually now want to move to 100%. So we keep a waiting list of people who want to increase their ownership. And then if somebody comes along and says, actually, I don't want my shares anymore, we can then allow that person to withdraw their shares, and then we go down the waiting list and let people, if somebody's giving up 500 shares, they can get their 500 shares back, provided that people on the waiting list want to increase their ownership by 500 shares. And essentially you get back your initial share capital minus 5% per year that the wind farm's been operating, because the co-op will aim to repay 5% of your share capital each year. So after 10 years, 50% of your share capital would have been repaid as part of your savings. So if you invested £1,000 initially, you would get back 50% of your initial share capital minus a small admin fee, basically. But you wouldn't be able to sell them for a profit. You would only get your current value back. Another question we have is, what if I've already got solar panels? Now, Ripple can work really well with people with solar panels. They can complement each other really well. So your savings from your wind farm, as I mentioned, will just be applied to your bill whatever your bill is after you've got your export payments or your FIT payments. However, you might only want to cover your sort of post-solar consumption levels, but in terms of being able to top up your consumption, so that you can make sure that across the whole year you are getting 100% or potentially even more than that of your electricity from either your solar panels or your wind farm. Ripple can work really, really well to do that. And then I think this might be the last question. So how does it work with Octopus Agile? Now, Octopus Agile is a tariff where you get half hourly, your electricity price changes every half hour, and if electricity prices go negative, you're effectively paid to use electricity. Now, your Ripple savings are not time dependent, so you can do all your optimization with, changing when you use your electricity to reduce your Agile bill as low as you possibly can. If your savings from your wind farm 1 month was £10, you would get that £10 savings applied to your bill, whether or not your bill was £60 in a month or £30 in a month. That £10 saving is sort of irrelevant as to what your bill would have been. It's just whatever your bill would be, it's reduced by, in this example, £10. So whether or not you're on Agile or you're on Go or you're on the Co-op 12-month fix or the Co-op 12-month variable, you would get that £10 saving applied to whatever your bill was that month. So it's not linked to time of use. So yeah, I've got another question about what happens at the end of the turbine life and what happens to the shares at 20 years. So basically, because your share capital, so say you've invested £1,000 in the wind farm, your share capital, the co-op aims to repay part of your savings. The co-op will repay 5% or aims to repay 5% of your share capital each year. So part of your savings is actually repayment of the share capital. So that means that after 20 years, all your share capital has been repaid. Now you still own, if you started owning 1,000 watts, you end up still owning 1,000 watts. It's just that the sort of value of those watts has the co-op's repaid all that value. So there's not sort of a debt that the co-op owes its members, but your savings would still be the same. It's sort of yeah, you still own exactly the same amount in terms of watts of the wind farm, but it just means that the share capital that relates to those watts has been repaid over the 20-year life of the 20-year sort of economic life of the wind farm. And this is so we sort of knock 5% off the end of the turbine's life, just so that it sort of smooths things out along the way, basically. We've also had a question about what effects COVID-19 has on timescales. So we're not expecting a huge change in timescales. That there may be, we've already had a bit of a delay in terms of when the project was launched. We were hoping to launch it earlier, but there were sort of Corona-related delays in getting the project launched, but we're not expecting big delays because of coronavirus. So the biggest risks to delays would be being able to work on site. So if it's not possible to get people to be working on site in a sort of socially distanced manner, that could delay construction. But because early on in the development or the construction of the wind farm, it's mostly, people in diggers who can work quite easily in a socially distanced environment. A lot of the work can be done in a very sort of socially distanced manner. It's only towards the end, when the turbine is actually going up and the foundations are being built, that it would be more difficult. So we would hope by then then think things might have eased off anyway. So we can't rule out a risk of delay, but the work program means that if things do have to be socially distanced very strictly for the next 6 months, we expect that most of the construction can still happen in a socially distanced manner. And we've got another question about who pays the maintenance costs. So as I said up here, let's get, so yeah, here we go. So on this chart, we've got the wind farm's operating costs. That includes the maintenance costs. So in my example, I said 2 pence per kilowatt hour. The operating cost of the wind farm includes the maintenance, it includes business rates, it includes ripple charges and management fee, it includes the paying the land rent, and it includes the maintenance contract as well. So all of those, and insurance costs and things like that. So all of those costs go into making that operating cost. So effectively, you as an owner of the wind farm, you pay your share of the operating costs, albeit you pay for it via your electricity bill, because that's what Octopus pays the wind farm. So you pay for it via your electricity bill, because the wind farm only needs to get paid enough to cover all of its ongoing operations and maintenance costs. So that's what Octopus pays, and it's that cost, by paying that cost instead of the higher wholesale price, that's how everyone gets their savings. Another question we've had is the wind farm co-op related to co-op energy? So no, there's no relationship between co-op energy and either Mid-Counties Co-op or co-op energy. They are entirely separate entities, so it's not part of it's not part of Mid-Counties Co-op, and it's Mid-Counties Co-op which owns half of Co-op Energy. So no, there's no relationship. Obviously, it is, they're all co-op still, but yeah, we're not part of Mid-Counties Co-op. And then has this model been used anywhere else? So we understand it's been used in the Netherlands, but on a much smaller scale. So you could only buy part of a wind farm, and it was almost a supplier that did it, so you had to be with that supplier. So it's never ever been done in the UK, and as far as we know, never ever anywhere in the world with this exact same model, whereby you can switch your electricity supplier. It's not an electricity supplier doing it. So yeah, this is genuinely the first in the very first time that this has been done. As I said, we want it to be the first of many wind farms that get operated and built like this. So what happens in the event of a disaster? Will members be liable for costs? So like any asset, the wind farm, and obviously the cost of that will be part of the operating costs. The wind farm will be insured against as many foreseeable events as possible, basically. So yeah, like any, you'd insure anything else, the wind farm will be insured both against mechanical failure, but also loss of anything which would cause sort of major loss in generation, because it's not generating, you wouldn't be getting your savings. And then another question about, can I buy more shares later, and what's the cut-off date? So we're looking to close the share offer in a couple of weeks. So you can buy shares up until the point at which the wind farm is fully subscribed. At that point, there's no more shares to be bought, because all the capacity of the wind farm has already been allocated. So we strongly encourage everyone to buy their shares as soon as they possibly can. As I said, we want to fill the project up as soon as we can. So yeah, do tell your friends and family as well about it. We want as many people to get involved as possible, basically. And then, how will decommissioning of the turbine be managed and paid for? So essentially, the turbine, from the off, there'll be a decommissioning fund which gets built up over the lifetime of the wind farm. That's towards the end of the turbine's life, so say sort of 5-10 years before we would expect the turbine to stop operating. The co-op directors, and obviously we can advise on this as well, will look at how big is that how big is the decommissioning fund. We'd look at, the fund is this big, but actually we expect to get this much in terms of scrap value. So you then look at, is a decommissioning fund sufficient, or is it too much? Actually, can we sort of reduce it a little bit? But yes, so basically the decommissioning fund is built up so that there isn't a sort of sudden bill after 25 years that everyone needs to pay a little bit into for the decommissioning of the turbine. But the scrap value of the turbine can cover a portion of that at the end as well. And the management of the turbine, the management of the decommissioning, you would normally get in third parties to manage the decommissioning of the turbine. And then who owns the turbine at the end? So the co-op at all points owns the wind farm. So as I said, your share capital may have been paid back, but you still own as much. If you started off owning 1500 kilowatts, 1500 watts of the wind farm, you still own that much of the wind farm, even at the end. So it's entirely owned by the co-op in perpetuity. So for as long as the wind turbine operates for. And do they keep getting, so another question, do they keep getting returns after 20 years? So yes, you still get all your savings as you would do, regardless of whether or not your share capital is being paid back. It just means that your savings are sort of, sort of pure savings. Part of it isn't repayment of share capital. So up to 20 years, within the first 20 years, part of your savings is repayment of the share capital. After 20 years, you still get the same level of savings. It's just that that isn't split into repayment of share capital and sort of, pure trading savings. So the level of savings doesn't change. It's just that it is, part of it isn't repayment of share capital, but you still own exactly the same amount of the wind farm at the end of its life as you do at the beginning. Obviously provided you hadn't increased or decreased your ownership. And why not invest in a sun amp instead is another question. So I think it'd be fantastic if you could invest in a wind farm and a sun amp to power your wind farm. So for those of people that don't know, Sun Amp is a Edinburgh-based heat battery manufacturer, and they manufacture heat batteries that you can either use a heat pump to power, or you can get electric ones as well. And yeah, we're really keen to get our sort of dream household would be one that is powered by or heated by a sun amp, and that sun amp is powered by somebody's very own wind farm. And once you can get into that, you're looking at really deep reductions in carbon emissions. So something in the order of sort of 66% once you've switched your heating and your electricity to and your EV, and you power your EV as well with your own wind farm, you're looking at 2/3 reduction in your lifestyle CO2, which is fantastic. Another question is, can I invest on behalf of somebody else, and if they aren't a bill payer? So and I had this question, can somebody buy it as a gift for somebody else? So you can make the actual payment on behalf of somebody else, but the person who will become the member of the co-op, they have to be the bill payer, and they have to agree to the customer agreement and the various sort of terms and conditions. But in terms of actually making the payment, somebody else can make that payment for them. So this was somebody wanted to buy it for their daughter's birthday and Christmas present, which is a fantastic Christmas present, by the way. This person wanted to buy it for their daughter for their birthday and Christmas combined. So it's okay for them to make that payment, but obviously the daughter would have to, or the person who's becoming the member of the co-op and actually being the owner of those shares, they have to be the one to sort of do that part and sort of say, yes, I am the bill payer, because they're the one that takes on the responsibility for that. Okay, so this question is, having joined this webinar, are you more or less likely to join Ripple? So there's just one of two answers, either more likely or less likely. So we just give you whatever, a few seconds to answer that, and then and I should point out, so that there's loads more information on our website. There's only so much that I could go through today. So yeah, ripplenergy.com, you can go there. That's where obviously you can join. So we want people to join as soon as possible. There's a share offer document. It's got a lot of information on it. and we've also got loads of animations as well that will explain sort of, you know, things like the bill savings in a bit more detail. So yes, thank you very much for joining. I think that's 70% of people have done that now, and we've got quite, stop it there. So we've got 80-20 split. So 80% of people are more likely to want to join Ripple, having seen the watch the webinar, which is fantastic. So obviously we are really super keen for everyone to join and take part in this fantastic project. Thank you so much, and do go on to ripplenergy.com to join, and there's also a chat function there, so we're always available if you want to ask us any more questions. We appreciate we haven't had time to answer every single one, but yeah, you can always ask us questions in the chat function on our website. So thank you so much for joining, and yeah, if you've got any other questions, just either drop us a line at info@ripplenergy.com or pop onto the chat function as well. Fantastic.